dive in. So welcome everyone. It's really, really good to see you. And I am going to share my screen right now. Okay, are you seeing my screen in the correct presenter mode?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. So everybody, we have a tight agenda today, really truly down to the minute, so we can ensure that most of the time today is actually dedicated to our social science and public health and medicine colleagues to ensure that you move forward with publishing your data. But first, we just, on behalf of the Design Safe and the Converge teams, we just wanted to welcome you here and just tell you that we are truly so excited that you are here with us today. As you all know, we were supposed to be together way back in April. We were anticipating that we were going to be in Boulder, Colorado for the first time, bringing the wonderful and wondrous Ellen Rathje to Boulder, but alas, that was not yet to be. And we've had a global pandemic that has obviously taken root in between the time that we were supposed to see one another and this day of August 4th. And so we are truly so thankful that the Design Safe team was so willing to pivot to this online format so that we could still have this opportunity. And so just at the outset, I wanted to share that this has truly, Ellen said at the beginning, we're really coming full circle, and it is really true. And so it's been just over 2 years since I sheepishly picked up the phone and called Ellen Rathje, who I just sort of barely knew through the natural hazards engineering research infrastructure. And I certainly knew her well enough to know that she is an eminent engineer and had been leading forth this amazing Design Safe project that hundreds of engineers had been taking advantage of. And so I sort of sheepishly picked up the phone and I called Ellen because I was in the midst of writing the Converge grant proposal and asked about this possibility of adding a task and a formal partnership where Design Safe would now become open to the social and behavioral science community and our allied fields that are concerned with the human consequences of disaster. And Ellen, without even taking a breath, said yes. And she said, absolutely, let's do this. And before I knew it, we had a grant, we had a formal partnership, which was August 2018. It was really almost to the day 2 years ago. Just a couple of months later, you can see on the screen, Maria and Tim and Craig arrived in Boulder, Colorado, and they immediately put the social scientists and the engineers who do interdisciplinary work to work. And we started drawing our data models and sharing with each other how we do this work. In July of 2019, last year at the Natural Hazards Workshop, several of you who are here today with us actually took part in interviews that Craig and his team led, asking us more so we could test out the initial draft data model. And then what you're not seeing on the screen is obviously all of the truly countless hours that the Design Safe team at the University of Texas, Austin have put into making possible what it is that we're going to do today, which is this first ever sort of opportunity for us to come together to begin sharing and publishing our data. And we are just over the moon. And so our big objectives for today, which you all saw on the agenda, but I think are worth repeating here because this 3 hours together, we really have some concrete things that we want to accomplish. So number one, first and foremost, we are excited to learn from our Design Safe colleagues about the new capabilities that they have generated to allow for social science and interdisciplinary research to now be published and shared in new and transformative ways through Design Safe. So you're going to learn more about the cyber infrastructure for the natural hazards community for the nation. And as Tim Cockerell would say, don't be deterred just because it says engineering, it's for all of us. And so that's what we're going to learn about today. Secondly, we're going to talk about and really have time for conversations about why publishing and sharing data and instruments is important for discoverability, for advancing our field, for the possibility of reducing duplication of effort, but advancing the possibility for replication and so forth. Third, we're actually going to learn how to ethically publish data that is oftentimes involves human subjects, but as some of you are going to share today, sometimes it doesn't involve that information, but we're going to go through that. Then we're going to move forward with receiving our next steps to move forward with receiving a permanent digital object identifier for our data or instruments, and then ultimately take steps toward becoming a converged data ambassador. Now, we realize that these are all words on a page, but we thought that sometimes the best thing to do is actually to show you why it is that we're hoping we're going to move forward. So let's see if this will play. And Ellen, can you hear it?
No, Lori.
Okay, so I'm going to stop doing that. And then Maria, we have a backup like good emergency managers. Maria, will you share this video on your screen so everybody can see 1 minute of the magic that is Design Safe and why it's so important for us to learn about this? Thank you, Maria.
Do you see the?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can see the video.
Uh-oh.
Can you turn it up a little bit?
It's the most up that
I don't think the sound is coming through.
Nope, job is going well.
There it is.
News. The reviews for our paper are back, and we just have to update figures 6, 8, and 10 with the latest data. Can you do that within the next week or two?
Well, Peter Lee has those data sets. I don't know what those data are.
Can we ask Peter then? Do you have his contact info?
He's in China.
I know, but do you have contact info?
No.
Do you know where the data might be? Or where he left his lab notebook with all the metadata?
The meta what?
Metadata. The labels for all the columns of data. The units for all the data. That kind of thing.
Oh, well, maybe the wind tunnel computer? Maybe the portable hard drives? Maybe that white box in the grad student office closet? Maybe the Google Drive project folder.
Thank you, Maria. And so, as you just saw, part of what Design Safe allows us to do is to make sure that we can actually, oh,
for free.
Okay, so.
Are you hearing that? Sorry. That may be me finally. So obviously part of one of the most immediate things that this can help us to do is, as you saw in that great video, to help us to get organized, to help us to know where our data are. But researchers in the social and behavioral sciences, as well as in engineering, and especially with the leadership of National Science Foundation, as you can see here, for the past 3 decades, leaders of the scientific community have been calling for this kind of sharing of access to scientific data. And the main bigger picture rationales for this are really to allow us to reproduce or to verify our research, to make the results of publicly funded research available to the public, which many of our funding agencies now require, to enable others to ask new questions of extant data, and also to advance the state of research and innovation. And so that's sort of the big picture vision that's helping to drive us forward. And so with that, I just want to again say welcome to all of you. I want to recognize the organizing committee, which consisted of Jessica Austin, Nicole Arrett, Dave Hondula, Valerie Marlowe, and Nathaniel Rosenheim. And Nicole and Valerie are with us today, and Dave and Nathaniel and Jessica will be with us on the August 27th event, but they did an exceptional job of advising on bringing this all together, and I want to acknowledge them. And with that, I want to turn it over to the Principal Investigator of Design Safe, Professor Ellen Rathje, who is going to offer a welcome as well. Ellen.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Lori. Well, first of all, I have to say I love working with Lori because she always makes me feel so good about myself when she talks. So Thank you, Lori, and hopefully you could talk to my kids about, you know, all those great things that you said. So I want to just echo Lori's comments. We are so excited to have everyone here, despite all of the difficulties in getting it done. And we're going to do our best to make this online version as good as it would have been in person. When we were funded by NSF 5 years ago as Design Safe, social science data was not on our radar at all, despite how critical it is to really understanding the impacts of natural hazards. So I was very excited when Lori called a couple of years ago to initiate this collaboration. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful collaboration. And I think we're just going to start seeing the fruits of all that labor. But the labor that went behind all of this work has mostly been done by the people below the line on this slide. Maria Esteva, who is here, and she helped us with the video. She's our data curator and really has been the brains and the visionary behind the Data Depot. Craig Jansen, who is a user experience expert who really has developed the interface to make it as intuitive as possible. Mayar Sharifi, who is a tax staff who has a PhD in civil engineering, so he understands the natural hazard side, but also works with the software developers. So he really bridges that gap of understanding the users, but also the back end, critical for testing and making sure things make sense. Keith Shrimska he is the software developer behind the scenes, and so he's made sure everything has been working. I just take the credit, so we'll pass over me. My deputy director is Tim Cockrell at TAC, and he makes sure all these folks are working on the right task and bringing everything together. And then the last person who's here from the Design Safe team is Scott Brandenburg, who is a co-PI for Design Safe at UCLA. He's a geotechnical engineer like me, but has really been our early adopter as part of our team who really tested things out. So he, again, really understands the interface. So you're really looking at the designers and builders of the interface who've tried to make it as good as possible. We know it can be improved more, but what we're here to do is really take you through how to use it so you can achieve your goals. So with that, I'll pass it back to Lori, and again, welcome.
Nice. Thank you, Ellen, so much. And we just also wanted to acknowledge Joe Wortman and Troy Tanner, who you see on the screen, that are with the RAPID facility at the University of Washington. And they've been developing mobile technologies for data collection. And we decided, just in the interest of time and focus, to keep this on the Design Safe side. But to all of our data ambassadors who are out there, in the future, we will often offer another one of these short trainings that's focused on how to use the RAPID app, or the RAPID application for mobile data collection, which also is directly connected to Design Safe and is really exciting. And so you'll be meeting Joe and Troy in short order. And then I just also wanted to acknowledge everybody at the Converge team who has contributed in varying ways to all of the efforts that we've been carrying out. But I especially wanted to call out Rachel Adams, who has been one of the early testers of the data model, along with Nathaniel Rosenheim and Elena Sutley, who really went to work with Maria and Craig once we started to get early iterations of this. And also Jennifer Tobin and Hao-Rui Wu, who did a lot of work on the back end with actually drawing our data processes. But again, everybody else on the screen has contributed in ways large and small, and ways that matter to this process. So really want to thank the team. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a moment so we can see one another again and can actually talk to each other and interchange. But I wanted to give a little bit of structure to what we're going to be doing for the next 30 minutes. So everybody that you see on this list right now, we're going to ask you to take just about 90 seconds to 2 minutes to share whatever it is that you want to share with the Design Safe team in particular, but with your colleagues who are on the call. And so giving a sense of what is your data, or what is the project that you're trying to bring to Design Safe, and then also in your 2 minutes, if you are bringing specific questions to this meeting that you really want to get on the table that you're nervous about or you're unsure about, this is the time when we really love to hear from you about that. And so I'm going to stop sharing. But we're going to follow that list. And Rachel, you, as always, being our Rachel Adams, get to lead us off. And so I'm going to keep time. And if we get to 2 minutes, I'm going to sort of start waving my arms wildly. And so we don't get out of control with this. But Rachel, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lori. So my name is Rachel Adams, and I'm a postdoctoral research associate at the Natural Hazard Center and at the Converge facility. And my goal for today is to learn how I could publish these Converge Extreme Events Research Check Sheet series. So this is part of a larger series that the Converge team, led by the principal investigator, Lori, has developed to help researchers design their studies and prepare to enter the field and conduct field research and exit the field. And in addition to wanting to learn how to publish the whole series and obtain a DOI, I am hoping to specifically learn how to publish one of the check sheets that I co-authored with two of my colleagues, Hao-Rui Wu, who's here today, and Candace Evans. And so learning really how to navigate publishing existing resources that can be accessed by others, but both individually as well as part of the larger series.
Thank you, Rachel, very much. And so now we're going to go to Hiba and Dan.
We have slides, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Dan is going to talk, but I'm going to be driving the slides because he's on his cell phone. And so hopefully, let's see. I don't know if you can see my slides.
Right now I can see like it looks like the background to your laptop. It's very pretty, but no slides yet.
What about now?
There we go. Perfect.
Okay. Are they in the?
Yes.
Station? Okay. So Dan, take it away. I'm going to just.
Yeah. I don't see the slides right now, but I'm going to go off my own slides that are the same. But so my name's Dan Perucci. My advisor is Hiba Baroud. And we're from Vanderbilt University in the Department of Civil Engineering. And if you go to the next slide for me. So about us,
Did we lose him?
Okay, I'm back. I just got kicked off for a second. Hello?
Yeah, Dan, we can hear you again.
Okay. The Baroud Research Group's interests lie within the area of statistical modeling and improving disaster preparedness and recovery. But more specifically, we do projects within the measuring and the impact of disruptive events on infrastructure in the community. We evaluate the interdependencies across infrastructure systems and communities, and we predict the recovery behavior to inform resource allocation before, during, and after a disruption. My specialization is in civil and infrastructure systems, and I have a few different projects that revolve around temporary housing, multi-criteria decision analysis, and inventory management. Specifically for this data that we're going to be trying to publish with Converge, it's revolving around flood mitigation and the evaluation of flood mitigation using assistance and flood severity metrics. I also have a project ongoing that's an imagery collection of the Tennessee tornado to influence policy decisions. But for the next slide, so the overview of the data, we compiled the data from various different sources, including FEMA mitigation programs, the National Flood Insurance Program, and a few others, but what you can see here is that we manipulated the data to show annually by state with economic values adjusted to 2018. And we filtered for only flood-related events, grants, and assistances. And this is shown in an example here in this animated heat map below. This heat map shows the annual FMA funding from 1996 to 2016. And FMA is just one of the 3 mitigation programs that we utilize in this data. Next slide.
And Dan, you are at time, so if you can go ahead and wrap up, please. Thank you.
Yeah. And so we have 2 research questions. How effective is flood mitigation at reducing the cost of flood-related hazard assistance? But overall, we want to encourage the reuse of this data to answer further unsolved questions and topics, including need-based assistance, social vulnerability, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan and Hiba. And I will say a question that Maria and I talked about this before, I'm going to raise a question for you, is about the publication of data that is somebody else's data. So you've clearly created this new data set and are doing all of these innovative things with the FEMA data and the data that you're merging. But that's actually a question that we have. So I'm just going to put that out there and let it sit. And we're gonna move to Rich next. Is Rich on here? No, Rich is not here. Okay, so we're just gonna hold Rich, and then Nicole, you are next up.
Hi everyone, I'm gonna try my video, but I don't know if it's gonna work. I live in the tech part of Seattle, and 11 to 2 are not my times to be on video. So it's nice to see you all. I am a faculty member in the Department of Environmental and Occupational Health Sciences at the University of Washington. Today I'm going to publish an in-depth interview guide that I developed with some colleagues from the University of Utah and Johns Hopkins as part of a Natural Hazards Center rapid response grant to look at evacuation decision-making determinants and no-notice events for hospitals. I'm really interested in learning more about how design safe interfaces with the RAP. As chair of the EERI Public Health Working Group, we're developing a reconnaissance tool for health and public health following disasters, and we would really like to learn more about how we can publish the tool and how it can then automatically be used in RAP or be used with RAP, and then what are the opportunities then to use that in other interfaces as well, for example, REDCRAP or Fulcrum. So thank you, and I look forward to spending time with you all today.
Nice. And Nicole, thank you again for leading this whole thing forward through the Science Organizing Committee. Thank you. Next over to Betty. We're going to go from Seattle to Boston. So over to you, Betty Lai.
Hi everyone, I'm Betty Lai. I'm a faculty member at Boston College, and the data I'm looking to publish today is pre-post disaster data from 2005 to 2011. It's from the Texas Assessment of Knowledge and Skills data. And I actually had the exact same question Lori was posing about Hiba and Dan's data. So this is publicly available data, but it literally took us 2 years of NSF funding with the biostatistician, a team of 11 biostatisticians to merge and collate this data. So I think it's really important and could save people a lot of work to be able to look at this data in this format. But that is my question, how can we publish this data that isn't ours, but is publicly available on the web, but could disappear at some point? And also, how do we publish the documentation that goes along with how they collected the data alongside our notes for how that data was coded? Those are a series of questions that I have about this. But our questions in this work were looking at publicly available performance data on how schools were doing pre and post disaster. What could we do in terms of describing how schools do and how schools recover? And I think this is a really important question that I know all of us are grappling with right now. And our hope is that by making this more widely available and giving people the metadata, that other people will be able to ask important questions that we haven't been able to ask yet. Thank you all. I'm looking forward to learning from everyone.
Beautiful, Betty, and I think that's exactly what Hiba and Dan might echo that. And so, design safe team, we're going to be on the edge of our seats to know the answer to this question. So, thank you. Now we're going to hop over to Valerie Marlowe.
Hi, spoiler alert, I am also interested in publishing other people's data. So, but I have a different question to ask. My name is Valerie Marlowe. I'm Assistant Director for Archives and Collections at the University of Delaware's Disaster Research Center. I manage the EO Core and Tele Resource Collection, which is a large collection of archives and a small library. And among our holdings, for those of you who aren't familiar, we have not just a lot of sort of raw data and original sources, but also we have the personal and professional papers of some scholars who have left the field for various reasons. And a couple of them, their families have given us permission to share sort of some of their unfinished studies where data was collected but not analyzed or published. And in particular, one recently is Joe Scanlon, who is a researcher in Canada, and he has some data. So we're really interested in publishing some of that through this platform to kind of make that available for replication and comparative studies that might be happening on various topics. And so we're really excited about that. I'm also interested in other collaborations through this project, which we can talk about at another time. But my question is for the Design Safe team. So I'm excited about the DOI piece, and I want to know kind of what are some other sort of tips and tricks to make your data as discoverable as possible to researchers who might want to use it. What kind of suggestions do you have? So that's my question, and thanks so much.
Beautiful. Thank you, Valerie, and thank you to you as well for serving on the Scientific Organizing Committee and for all the advice and feedback you have provided over the past year to get us here. So thank you. And next, we're going to bounce over to Connecticut and hear from Alexis.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully my lights stay on during these 2 minutes. I'm Alexis Mergenoff. I'm a faculty member at NYU School of Global Public Health. I'm also part of a research group there called the Program on Population Impact, Recovery and Resilience, or PIR squared. We do quite a bit of primary data collection with populations that have been affected by large-scale disasters. My dog just came into the room, sorry. So we'd like to publish a couple of items related to our study on Hurricane Sandy, where we surveyed 1,000 residents who were highly impacted by Hurricane Sandy and spoke to them in 2014 and 2015. So we have a restricted data set that we'd like to publish. And because we've done quite a bit of training of large field teams, we also wanted to publish some of our field management booklets that we've put together for trainings. We think that those would be helpful to other researchers. And also our survey instrument along with our code book to show other people how we kind of link our survey and survey instrument and data set together. So those are the couple of pieces. I don't have any specific questions at the moment. I'm hoping that what we've pulled together is sufficient, but after talks today, I think we may want to tweak some of the items before putting them up. But yeah, thanks.
Nice, thank you. And Alexis, I hope that Remy, the cute puppy dog, is going to make an appearance at some point during this session.
We'll see. He's sometimes camera shy, but I'll see what I can do.
Okay, thank you, Alexis. So I am next up and I'm setting my timer. So I'm Lori Peak and I'm excited to be here not just as a co-convener of this event, but also as somebody who is so excited to publish some additional data via Design Safe. So first, I want to say something to my social science brothers and sisters on this call. So when we first developed this relationship with Design Safe, it was like, okay, well, we've got to learn how to do this. So what is the first thing I do? I set up a Design Safe account, and then Maria helped me and how Ray and Mason, we actually published our first data set. And so what I want to say to the social scientists is it felt awesome. It was such an amazing feeling. And so we already published one data set, which is of hazards and disaster research centers globally around the world. And so that's already up, it's on Design Safe and so forth. So I want to say that's awesome, but that leads me to my first question, or my big question I brought into this for Design Safe, which is, as you're hearing, there are lots of different things. Some people like Rachel or Alexis are wanting to publish like documents and get a DOI for that. Other people have data. And so the question I brought to the call is what actually ends up in the social science and interdisciplinary field research data model versus what ends up in the other category. And so I'm hoping that Design Safe will teach all of us about the different categories where we can publish data. So that's my question. And then the data that we're bringing today that we're gonna publish is actually the SSEER data, all de-identified. And we now have a 2018 data set, a 2019 data set, and we wanna publish that de-identified data because it's already up on the SSEER map. And our partners at Esri actually recommended that we publish the data so that you have a data citation to go with the map. And that is my 2 minutes, and thank you so much. And I'm going to now turn it over to Jason Von Medding in Florida.
Hi, my name is Jason. Thanks so much for putting this together, Lori and everybody. I'm faculty at University of Florida and one of the founding members of the Florida Institute for Built Environment Resilience. I today want to share data which is from a partnership with the psychology department, and we've been looking at the language behind how we discuss disasters and how the public understands disasters. And we ran some experiments through Project Implicit, which some of you may be aware of. Some of my colleagues at UF are directors of Project Implicit. So we've used that as a way to investigate this. And we have a data set of 507 participants that relates different measures like political orientation and different biases and beliefs about the causes of disaster, whether they are of natural origin or social origins, to their advocacy for different ways to mitigate risk. So that's the data set we want to publish today is from this survey. We'd love to also publish the protocol for the survey and that tool itself. But I mean, personally, I'm thinking of lots of other data from other projects, whether surveys or interview data or models and maps. That's kind of what I'm thinking that I would use the tool for. So yeah, looking forward to learn more today. Thank you.
Nice, thank you, Jason. And then Ray, over to you.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Ray. So I'm a faculty member at Dalhousie University. Hello, all the friends. Today I would like to publish a data which I conduct a literature review about how to build a cultural competency for disaster researchers. I think no matter disaster researchers or data scientists, you might have already confronted the same issue that you need to conduct research in some communities where you don't have any or maybe enough cultural background. So how can you smoothly conduct research over there? In order to answer that question, I conduct a literature review, finding all the publications in the past almost 50 years, how to help the disaster researchers to build this cultural competency. And we know that literature review is a very common research method for all the researchers. So how can we build upon that one and contribute to our existing research? That is why I would like to publish this data. And also, I would like to ask Design Safe team a question, maybe a little bit going forward. So since disaster don't respect our national boundary, and the international community have to collaborate together to fight for the disaster. So how can we contribute to the cross-national data sharing? And how can we collaborate together to contribute to disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation? Thank you.
Thank you, Hao-Rui. And then I want to our engineering colleagues on the line, one of our methods that we often use in the social sciences is called participant observation, which is where you're there and you're hanging out and you're listening. And so at this moment, but you're learning along the way. So I wanted to acknowledge that we actually have 3 participant observers from the Natural Hazard Center and the Converge team on the line today. So Jolie Breeden, Melissa Villarreal, and Luther Green are on here. So Jolie, Melissa, and Luther, in these remaining minutes, did you have any questions that you were bringing in as our participant observers that you wanted to raise with Design Safe?
I don't, Lori, but thank you for asking.
Thank you for being a participant observer. Hi, Luther. Good to see you. And Melissa, you're good?
Yes, I also did not, but I'm just very excited to be here and see the discussions that go on and how to do this in the future. I'm still, I'm not ready to publish anything, but I definitely want to be able to take advantage of these resources in the future. So I'm excited.
Beautiful. And Melissa, you're going to make an appearance again at the end when we talk about becoming a data ambassador. So you're and some of the networks that you're going to help share this knowledge with. So thank you, Melissa, Luther, and Jolie for being with us. Thank you to all the participants. And now we have about 5 minutes sort of in this session. So to the Design Safe team, you heard many questions being raised. So do you want to sort of take it from what you heard or any comments back to us?
So let me just start and say, this is really exciting to see the diversity of interest. I mean, we've got hardcore numbers, instruments, potentially geospatial data. I mean, the breadth is amazing. So that's exciting to see. I think I'm gonna throw it over to Maria because we've been chatting in the chat box because there's been several questions about repackaging other people's data, because it is a contribution to clean data and put it together, even though it may be publicly available somewhere else, to really make it more usable. And I know Maria has some thoughts, so I'll give her 2 minutes. You put your timer on, Lori. Okay. So Maria, did you want to say a few words?
Yes, we contemplate the possibility of republishing or citing data that has been used, from original data or secondary data publication. Of course, in that case, and I will talk a little bit about that at the end. We will have to look into the permissions available. So you are mentioning that all of this is publicly available data. We will have to consider where you want to publish subsets of that data as raw, and then the synthetic data that you made out of that data, the integrated data, how to document the sources, how to document provenance, make sure that the licenses available in the data allow you to repurpose that data. And so we will have to use a license that is similar to the license given to you. But we do have in place ways for you to really cite and point to the original data. Beyond that, whether you publish this as a field research project, you will see when Craig talks about the different models that you have available in Design Safe, we will be able together to make these decisions. So yes, it is possible to publish secondary data.
Right. Wonderful, thank you, Maria. And I think it's important. I mean, when I've given this talk, a talk about kind of the role of data publishing, I try and think of it as a web where people are each publishing not only their research, but their data sets. And that means somebody could ultimately pull from all of those data sets and create completely new knowledge by integrating those data sets. But it is important that those linkages go back to the original sources. So wonderful. Anyone else want to say something from the Design Safe team?
I want to say that we will also be able to talk about, well, cross-national data sharing. I think, Ellen, you can say something about that.
Oh, yeah. I was excited to hear that. We have lots of data from all over the world. So.
I think also that we will address restrictions, and I will talk about restrictions and protected data. And I also will talk about how can you do to promote data. There are certain optimization techniques, and there are also things that you can do individually. And I will talk about that at the end. So I think that the things that we do not know, and there are things that we will have to discover together in this journey. And there are things for which we have certain answers. And definitely, Rachel, you will be able to publish the booklets as a series and individually, and we'll talk about that. So the things that we don't have answers for are things that we are really hoping to discover together.
And that's the key. This really is a partnership. This is just the beginning. We would love to get feedback. If there's something that's not there that would be useful, we'd love to hear about it. If there's a way you'd like to serve up data we don't have, we'd love to hear about it. We're working on different ways to map data. We're using SQL databases. If you have very structured data, may not always be clear on the website how to do that, but just talk to us. We're here to help. So Lori, do you want to take it since it's 1:45? Are we?
Yeah, so now we're going to actually, we're going to turn it over to you, Ellen. Your prime time now for your presentation. And so next we're going to hear from Ellen, who's going to give us an overview of design safe capabilities, and then she's going to pass it over to Maria. Thank you.
Yep, exactly. Thank you. All right. So some of you may have seen some of these slides. Just get a point
that looks good, Ellen.
Great, thank you. At the Natural Hazards Researchers meeting, it's a little hybrid of what I presented there, but really just trying to provide you an overview of design safe and the capabilities there, not only in data publishing, but more broadly. The question always starts out is, what is design safe? And I guess for a social scientist, you don't necessarily design things. So right off the bat, you see we were thinking engineering, but the safe is the key side of things, I think. Because what we want to do at Design Safe is provide you a web-based research platform that provides you tools to do your research. That means to manage data, analyze data, and understand that data that you are using to investigate natural hazards and their impact. Our vision is that the cyber infrastructure becomes an integral part of the whole research discovery process, not just the data repository, but even broader than that. Of course, that starts with providing a platform for that data sharing and publication. That is kind of the core of what we're here for. But with that data sharing and publication interface, we can then enable research workflows, we can provide access to high performance computing if necessary, and we can deliver cloud-based tools that will support the things you want to do in terms of data analysis, data visualization, and data integration of the various and diverse types of data that do reside in Design Safe. And of course, if we're successful in these three sub-bullets, we want to amplify and link the capabilities of natural hazard researchers in the US and abroad. So the key is, this really is a global community. And even today, we have data published by researchers in many other countries, not just the United States. So if you go to the Design Safe website, designsafe-ci.org, the research workbench is the main area in the nav bar that enables the research that you would like to do. And so we'll take a closer look at some of these components. I'm going to focus really on three. The data repository, of course, that's the key for today. The first thing to realize about the data repository, there are different levels of access. You have a private space called My Data. You have a project space called My Projects, where you can collaborate with others, and that's where that data in the projects are ultimately shared and published. That when published, it goes into the published space, which is publicly accessible and curated. And we also do have a kind of uncurated area called community data where data can also reside. Second to that is the Discovery Workspace, because that's where the other thing I mentioned was tools and cloud-based tools, and that's what happens in the workspace. You do your work. So we have apps and tools that support computational simulation, data analysis, visualization, and the key is all those files that are in the data depot can be accessed from those tools. And then the third thing of interest would be what we call the Reconnaissance portal, which is where we provide a map-based interface where it's easy to discover published field data associated with specific natural hazard events. Now, typically I talk about these 3 bullets: data depot, workspace, recon portal, but I'm gonna kind of flip it so that the data comes at the end, because ultimately that'll follow better into Maria's talk. So just to give you an idea about the workspace, there's, as I mentioned, cloud-based tools, there's HPC, high performance computing enabled simulation codes and resources. If you're interested in that, I encourage you to look around. But one thing I wanted to focus here that you may be interested in particular for data analysis, is under our data processing or section, is the fact that we have a cloud-based Jupyter Hub that supports both Python and R notebooks. So you can write in either Python or R, and this can be used for so many things: data analysis, data viewing, developing AI machine learning models. We can even submit jobs to the high performance computers. So here's just a screenshot from our machine learning tutorial last year, where we took a published data set and developed some machine learning models, and you can see the scripts are in there and the outputs, and this again all is happening on the design safe side of the server. So again, something to keep in mind on the data publishing or data use side. The Reconnaissance portal, this is how you can easily identify archive data sets that represent natural hazard events. Each map pin represents a natural hazard event for which we have a link to data. You can see lots of map pins outside the United States, although it has been a particularly busy few years in terms of the US. But just to show you what this looks like, we could scroll down, let's say click on the map pin here for New Zealand, and you can see these are the available data sets in this red box. Then if I click on one of those, this is a landslide inventory that I published after that earthquake. You can see here's the data set. And then just to show you how things link to tools, I can take the GeoJSON, I can actually open it in one of our tools called HazMapper, and here's the landslide inventory, some photos, some track logs, etc. So again, this idea of data depot as well as tools in the cloud, that's what we're looking for here. Okay, but let's go back to the data depot, because that's why we're all here. So if you've hopefully gotten an account, you've logged in, you can see the different sections of the data depot on the left. The one that's going to be most relevant for data publishing is My Projects. So this is a space where you share files, data, results with collaborators, and eventually publish it for public use. But remembering, you don't have to publish everything that's in a project. You actually can select subsets that you ultimately publish. So you can see I've got lots of different projects that I'm a team member on. A couple other things to keep in mind, we can link to your cloud service providers like Box, Dropbox, or Google Drive. But when you publish, your project will still remain in your project, but a copy of it of what you published will go into the published section. If we go look in the published section, so here's an example from Scott Brandenburg, who's here today. Now this is an experimental project on some soil geotechnical work that was done at UC Davis, but the first thing you realize, it looks formal. It looks almost like a journal publication. If you scroll down, you can see it well organized with these really nice color-coded bars. Thank you, Craig, for the UI design. But ultimately, you get down to an organized area where your data files reside. And this is all that is, all of this is all on that one page. Now, This is an experimental data set, perhaps not as interesting for the work that you are doing. So we do have 5 different data models. Maria alluded to this. They're structured yet flexible to support the different types of research that one may do. It doesn't make sense to publish census data in something that's organized based on experimental work. So that's why we have these 5 different data models, but within each of them, there's still flexibility for you to organize it the way you like. The 2 that we will focus on today is the field research project. This is for work done basically after or long after a natural hazard, so somehow associated with an area affected by a natural hazard. And then we have always had this other project because we realize sometimes your work doesn't fit into any of these boxes, and we want to give you a box to put your data. This is the most flexible of the data models. So, so this, you're going to hear a lot more about this over the course of the rest of today. The last thing to keep in mind about this is because of this flexibility, it is the responsibility of you, the researcher, to document it well, to organize it well, so others can most easily use the data that you've published. So we were excited earlier this year when we had our first published field research data set with social sciences data. Thank you, Nathaniel Rosenheim from Texas A&M. And you can see it's a field research data set. It's actually a survey instrument. So if we scroll into it, you can see we've got the PI, here's the food retail survey instrument that others may use. Importantly, we have a DOI, right? And we've heard several people ask about DOI, so that is great. And I want to make sure it's clear, and I encourage all of you that you know, not only, I think it's clear everyone knows you want a DOI, but how do we cite these data sets? We want you to cite them in your reference list in your subsequent paper, not in the text of not in the abstract, not in the acknowledgements, but actually in the reference list. And in fact, if you click on this link, you can actually get the full citation, just copy and paste right into your paper. Now this, so this is an example of a survey instrument published. Craig and Lori and Mayar worked really hard to kind of mock up what a field research model published data set would look like if it was really supporting integrated interdisciplinary data sets. So if you squint a little bit here, you might be able to see it says Hurricane Michael, structural, and of course, Zoom popped down on me there, structural damage and population resilience. You know, you say, look, this is from Hurricane Michael, it was a hurricane. But what's important is what you see down here is how are we going to organize this? And this is, you're going to learn more about this. But the language we're using is a mission and a collection. So a mission, I like to describe it as a group of data collections or just a group of collections that are associated with either a common goal, a common location, or a common time. So in this case, on the left, you can see the mission was Mexico Beach. Okay, so we investigated this area around Mexico Beach. But within Mexico Beach, we have different collections. And those collections are data or documents grouped together based on a shared purpose within the project or the mission. So what's really important here is we're seeing we can integrate the engineering or geoscience collection. So this is where the RAPID team looked at the damage data to the water tower, to the Blue Beach area, to this area between Panama City to Mexico Beach. And here's the social sciences connection where they interviewed children and parents at shelters within the same region. Okay, so these are related to one another. Same area, we've got the engineering observations, we have the social science observations. Now they can be used together to really do interdisciplinary research. This looks very nice, and Lori worked really hard with Craig to come up with, make sure all the words actually made sense, and it's a meaningful example. Craig and Mayar are going to explain how you can make your data and curate your data to look like this. So So this is kind of where I want to leave you. Some of you, this data sounds very relevant, or this approach looks very relevant based on saying, oh, this is data from Hurricane Sandy or whatnot. So I hope we'll be able to, by the end of today, you'll be well on your way to having a published data set that looks like this. So I'm going to stop there and just see real quick if there's any questions, and then I'll pass it back to Lori.
Nice. Thank you, Ellen, and everybody on the call. If you have questions, just feel free to put your name in the chat box if you want to be called on. And otherwise, Ellen, that was a great overview, and just thank you for letting us peer inside into the place where we are traveling. And thank you for that. And I think now we'll turn it over to Maria.
And let me just say goodbye, because I have a PhD defense I do need to attend. So I'm going to pass it on to my wonderful team, who are great.
We hope that the defense goes well for the student.
He will. He's a great student. So, all right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
Ellen. See you soon.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you. Okay, and Maria, you're in slideshow mode, and it looks great. Thank you. Oh, whoops, or no, it disappeared, but it was in slideshow.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And you see my slide, the life cycle of protected data?
We did. It was up there, but then it disappeared.
Oh, okay, hold on then. Oh, share screen again. Sorry. Now?
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I will be speaking about how protected data can be managed in Design Safe. And this is a very relevant and important topic for social scientists. It wasn't up to now. So first, let's just briefly remind us what protected data is. Of course, an overall, in a nutshell, protected data is data that should not be disclosed to unauthorized parties. And within that, there are different types of protected data, data with personal identifiable information, data under FERPA, HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Probability and Accountability Act, the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or other federal and state government restrictions. For example, data that has some relation to national security, or whatever other agreements maybe you would have with your federal or state local authorities in grants or contracts, and data with very sensitive confidential information. So for example, criminal records would be a good example of that type of data. And also protected data has different levels of risk. You may have my name and my food preferences, and that maybe I don't want that data to be disclosed, but it has a very different level of risk than if you have my name and my bank account information, if that data gets out of the protected space. So for managing data, it is very important to understand what types of identifiers data has for managing protected data. And there are two, direct and indirect. Direct is any information that relates specifically to an individual, that you can tie it to me, my photo, my social security number, my passport number, my address, my email address. You can identify me with those specific types of information. And there are indirect identifiers, which is information that combined can disclose the identity of an individual. So place of birth, political affiliation. We saw that there's a data set that has political affiliation, medical information, education information. So for example, when you evaluate that, you may consider if somebody has interviewed me and they say, this is a female that is a data curator and works at the Texas Advanced Computing Center, it will be very easy if you have narrowed down my identity. It will be very easy to say, it's either this or that person, but you won't have 1,000 people. You will just have to decide between a very few people to decide this is this person, to identify me. So this is why you have to manage direct and indirect identifiers. But what we want to know, what are these data and risks? What are these risks? And of course, the risk of data being accessed by an unauthorized people or unauthorized people, it always is a little bit of a mix between technical problems and human loopholes or mistakes. There's risk of data being tampered with, somebody that modifies data, risks of sensitive information being disclosed, somebody that tells something or passes a document that has access to a document and passes a document that shouldn't be passed to others, or gives authorization or passwords for somebody else to access that data. Of course, there's risk of data corruption and loss. This is a technical problem that could happen, identity theft, and then, of course, the loose security practices within even a team that is supposed to safekeep the data. Since its inception, DesignSafe has not had a data security incident that is of any consequence to the examples that I have displayed here. But this is because there's a lot of monitoring, redundancy, and of course, the best practices and willingness to really cooperate and contribute with the rules or the policies that we will explain and lay out. So as Ellen said, managing data, DesignSafe is not just a repository. It allows users to manage data throughout the whole life cycle. So while most of you have already your data ready to be published or to be curated and have transitioned across most parts of the research life cycle, you could in the future use DesignSafe from the moment of project planning, and you will be using the storage from the moment of project planning and up until data reuse, including, for example, and somebody asked about this, the automatic data transfer from the mobile application, the Wrap app. So you may be conducting interviews in the field with personal identifiable information, and that data can be transferred directly to the DesignSafe storage. So throughout these research stages, you will be managing protected data in private and team shared spaces and storage, and across public instances and in analysis workspaces. So this has to be taken into consideration. At a basic level, you will be managing private and public data. And we are talking always about protected data or human subjects data, and there are spaces and rules that apply for each instance in DesignSafe. So let's talk about private storage in DesignSafe. This is prior to publication. It's raw data, it's not curated. You may be bringing this up from the field, right directly from the field. So you have to assess its nature and evaluate risks before you even transfer this data. So no HIPAA or FERPA data, no data with national security information, no data that contains extremely sensitive information. I said, you know, for example, criminal records. If any of these cases happen, consider using tax-protected data storage. And so even before you create a project in DesignSafe, a field research project, you will get all of this information that you see to your right, and you will get the opportunity to tell me and our attack, there's a specialist, there's a protected data specialist, and we will talk to you in order to see if you really need to consider tax-protected data storage. And tax-protected data storage is the extra space where you could be storing HIPAA, FERPA, FISMA data with extremely sensitive information, because it runs the extra mile. It has ISO standards that are specifically to store these very, very delicate or sensitive data. But you will not deposit these in here, the data depot, or you will not publish this data, or you will not be depositing it in my projects or my data. It's too much, it's way too much. You could though, if you have PII light data, meaning data with personal identifiable information that you need to analyze yourself or share with your team, the tag storage, my data or my project is enough, secure enough for you to store that data. And also, of course, if the data is de-identified, the more, perfect, no problem. And we can talk about that, specify that. But PII, light data that is not related to HIPAA or FERPA or other federal regulation or state regulation, or is not extremely sensitive information, you could deposit in design safe. Raw data, no curated, store the data there. Once you are ready to publish, once you have curated the data, you cannot publish HIPAA, FERPA, or data under other federal constraints, just like it is. You will have to follow the regulations that you have promised and de-anonymize the data and curate the data so that it can be published. No PII can be published in Design Safe. Not more than 3 indirect identifiers that put together will not disclose identity. And here, the use of keys or other ways for de-anonymization should be really explained in a data dictionary. And you will have to evaluate in context with the data size, the geographic distribution, demographic distribution. Again, how are you going to use these up to 3 indirect identifiers? If the data turns to be not comprehensible because you have anonymized the data, you have removed all the PII information, and you have only left 3 indirect identifiers, and the data doesn't make sense and doesn't serve its purpose, then you will have to just publish the metadata about the data. And you will have to decide, you will have to manage this data in the future and say, here I copied this from my CPSR. There's going to be a banner that explains this is the person, this is a contact person responsible for this data set. If you want to, we are interested in this data set, you have to contact this PI and agree with them in the conditions in which they are going to share the data with you. And this is something that we have to think about, and you have to think about, because these may haunt you for many, many years. So people will be contacting you, and we will have to keep track of where you've gone, or if you're retired, or etc. So this is always, this will be an issue that we will need to, we will help, we will discuss, we will decide how to. And then the reality of all of this, and I just did a very simple explanation of all of this, is that all these considerations really take place at this project's planning phase. Really, it's the best way of putting it. And for storing and publishing protected data, it's always good to think about what are the most publication permissions that you can obtain from subjects in your IRB, considering, of course, the characteristics and the ethical constraints of this research. What permissions does your IRB support? And in the case of interdisciplinary publications, and you may tell me if I am right or wrong, but what I have been observing is that social scientists treat data very differently from engineers. So you may have surveys along with damage building assessments. The damage building assessment will tell exactly where that house is or was. Instead, social scientists always tend to give the block. They don't give the proper address. They give the block, they give the an area, a diffused area. So you really hear there's a lot to talk with your engineering colleagues when you're out in the field. And so here I stop sharing. And if you have any question, I don't know if there's any time, but this is just an overview. And in terms of, and if you have other concerns related to protected data, I'll be glad to discuss.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So one of the things that I was thinking of, and I've seen this done at ICPSR, is you could publish a restricted data set and then have people contact you and go and put them on your IRB maybe if they wanted identifiable information. Is that something that people have done before? Or something you're considering doing? Because I think one of the great things about this platform is just to bring more awareness to the data that exists. And so even just giving people the opportunity to use it and then say, oh, I'd like to do a little bit more, and still giving them that opportunity would be great.
So I think if I understand your question, let's say that you have a very restricted data set that you really cannot publish none of it. So you will be able to use the Design Safe platform to publish the metadata. You get a DOI for the citation, and then you will have to publish a file that is the commitment or the conditions under which, with your contact information, the conditions under which you personally will share this data. And so then the process for the for you to anticipate in your IRB how you will have IRB, how you plan to share the data. So you will say, I will share the metadata in Design Safe or in any other repository, but I will only share the data with people that are interested under these conditions. That they will never disclose this or that they will, use it synthetically. I mean, you will have to think through that. And then that person will have to really commit to comply with you. And if you see my slides, I will turn them to Lori for distribution, and I copied from ICPSR their commitment document. This is always the case in which you have to do a handshake. It's not something that you're going to police people or you're going to, there's no such thing. So it's always in good faith, and you will have to really decide whether you want to share this data with this person that will contact you through email or,
And I was going to say, just thank you for that presentation, Maria. And Alexis, I love that question. And one of the things that I was thinking about is really powerful about, for example, like you said, you may choose to first publish the survey instrument from the Sandy Children and Family Health Study, right? And people may, so just Maria, to make sure we're all super clear. So let's say that Alexis publishes the survey instrument, but then she could write in her description, there's also data that's available, but you have to contact us to get the data. And so the data is not just there to like be downloaded on a click, but then the beautiful thing about having the instrument up there, that's sort of the pathway that gets you to Alexis's broader project. And then she can kind of decide, but some of the others of us, we may want both the data and the instrument. Like Jason was saying, he may be ready at this point to put both his data and his instrument up there. And there's none of this like having to email Jason, for example. So we can all kind of decide where we're comfortable.
Exactly. And you will not only be able to publish your instrument and the metadata, but you will also be able to publish the metadata about that restricted collection. So you are going to say, in this data, this is how this data is, and you will be able to describe it perfectly. But I will only provide this data with these conditions, so contact me. But you will be able to even describe and get a DOI for that data, except it's not publicly available because of all of these privacy concerns, ethical concerns. But you will be able to say, this is what I did, this is what I have, and I have, so many subjects, and I sampled them like this, and I have their names and their health condition and their living situation, and people will see the richness and the importance of that data. Described, but not the content, not the sense.
This is really helpful, because one of my concerns when I was pulling together the restricted data last night was that once I start taking out all the demographics, that context and nuance is lost. Yeah, exactly. So many of us are really interested in, and it's like I leave in 3 indirect identifiers, and all of this information is gone. So this is a really helpful solution to that. Thank you.
Beautiful. And Alexis, thank you for raising that. And just in the interest of time, we're going to get to hear from Maria again, and she's going to answer in some of her later presentations some of the really good questions that the participants raised in their intros. And so maybe now, Craig and Mehar, are you ready for us for you to take over the wheel of the car?
Yeah, I can take it from here.
Yeah, you sound great.
Hold on. Okay, sorry. Multiple windows screwing things up. Okay, share my screen. You guys see the design homepage?
Yeah, that's perfect, Craig. We can see it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to assume y'all know nothing. So if I'm redundant, it's on purpose. And we're going to start from the homepage. I've logged in up here. And you guys are welcome to follow along if you'd like. Or you can just watch the presentation. I'm going to click on Research Workbench. I'm going to go to the Data Depot. So Ellen kind of gave an overview of the different sections here. So my data is for your private files. It's not a shared area. And then my projects is where we're going to spend today. And that's a shared space where you can publish sets of data. And once they're published, they appear down here in published. So from anywhere in the Data Depot, there's this big button in the upper left called Add. I'm going to click Add. I'm going to click New Project. And I'm going to recreate Lori's project one for one, using all the metadata we decided on earlier. So at the beginning here, it asks for just some basic information because we want to make it easy for people to just create a shared space to share data. Later, we're going to get into the curation and the metadata that's specific to field research. But for now, I'll just enter a basic title, my name, and we'll add Maria. And any other project members, these guys are optional for now, but these are other people that don't have PI status, but can access the project and can view, edit, curate, and publish. And we're going to add the project. Okay, so this is a basic bare bones project. It's empty, no folders are in here. There's no project type selected yet, so we haven't said that this is a field research project. I could upload photos right now, or upload data right now, or I can change it to a field research project and start filling out metadata, which is what I'm going to do first. So I'm going to click Edit Project here, and here we have project type, and we say Change Project Type, and here we have all the selections that Ellen showed earlier. So down here we have Field Research Project for work done by observation in areas affected by natural hazard, and other projects. If your work doesn't fit any of these categories above, you'll be using this. And I've talked with Maria. I understand that there's some people that might fit this category, and I'll show this off at the end, but for now I want to show off field research. And I think it's important for all of you to know the full capabilities, even if you're not publishing field research right now, so that you can be an ambassador and tell other people at conferences about the capabilities in field research. So I'm going to select field research. And at the beginning, we have a basic overview of all the components of curating. And a lot of this has been explained before today. And so we have the 4 components. We have missions, collections, relating data, and file tags. And I'll get into each of these more later. But here you can kind of get an overview of what they are and see some definitions. And you can get back to this page, these screens later if you want to revisit these definitions. And we have user guides, some guidelines, and a link to Maria's office hours here. So we talked a little bit about missions. Here's the definition for them. Here's some specific pieces of information that people find useful. It has its own DOI. There's multiple missions in a single project. You can publish sets of missions over the lifespan of a project. So if one project spans 10 years and you do one mission in year 1 and another mission in year 5, you can do that. And here we also appeal to the social science folks by acknowledging that some researchers may refer to missions as time 1 or wave 1. So we're always thinking about you guys. Research planning collections, set apart files that have to do with the planning of your mission. During our user studies last summer, during which I talked with 82 of you, a lot of people expressed a lot of interest in reusing these files. So we wanted to create a separate collection so that these files could be set apart and easily found amidst other files. And then we have a list of file types here that people said that they would like to publish or people said that they would like to reuse. And again, you can get back to these screens later. Engineering geosciences collections for the engineers, all the files they could upload. Social sciences, here's all the data files you could upload. And so both of these collections are for the actual data. Documents collection is for anything you want to publish outside of a mission, and it gets its own DOI. It's kind of a basic collection. So Nathaniel used that to publish some things that weren't in a mission, but could be used in a mission later. Relating data. Relating data is essentially kind of organizing your project and where you want certain collections to appear. If you want collections to appear next to each other, if you want the user to see, someone viewing your publication to see social science first, or engineering data first, or the planning collections first, that's where you do that. And then last is file tags, and these are specific to each file. You can put little tags on each file that use community terms that we've worked with the community to develop. So this is kind of a predefined vocabulary, which we know people like. And if you can't find something that fits what you're trying to describe, you can select other and enter in a custom tag. You can add multiple tags. These are all optional, but strongly recommended, and it really makes other people, people viewing your project, makes it a lot easier for them to quickly identify at a glance while looking at your project the important files. Some best practices we've learned from working with people, don't publish zip files because we can't unzip files within the interface. Don't use too many folders because then things get too nested and hard to see. If you're going to use raw data, consider why you're doing it. We've had a lot of people that will just publish loads and loads of images without really curating it. And always publish interoperable file formats so that others can easily open their files. Okay, and then this is what Maria was just going over. It's kind of a check to make sure no one's uploading data that is has PII data. So we're going to say no. We don't have any non-personal information, and then some basic guidelines, and then you finish this. And you are brought to a new edit project window that has metadata for social sciences. So the required fields are indicated with the red pillbox. And so we're going to fill those out for now. So the event in this case is Hurricane Michael. Event dates, select any date. No, this isn't right. Location was Florida. And we're going to put in longitude. And what's really cool is when you enter these lat and longs, the interface will turn these into a hyperlink that links right over to Google Maps. When we were meeting with y'all last year, people said said that they want to see a quick view of where this is in the world, because while we in the US know about Florida, if there's a Taiwan tsunami, we want to know exactly where that is in the world quickly. So we have quick links over to Google Maps using these two pieces of input. The event type, this is a hurricane. We can add multiple event types. So this is also a storm surge, which doesn't look like it's appearing here right now. So I can enter in other and flood. Keywords. Those. And description. So something you should know about this interface is we have this modal here, and if you click out of it, it will close the modal. We're currently working on fixing that, so it'll prevent users from exiting the modal by clicking outside of it. But some people kind of lose the information that they've entered here unless they click update project first. So just be sure to not click outside the modal. We're going to get that fixed this month. As some people, I think Nathaniel was writing his descriptions in a Word document and then just pasted them over, so we didn't lose any information. So there's some quirks to the interface that we're still ironing out. Click update project. And refresh the page. There we go. So now the description is displaying here. We got the keywords, events, lat and longs, which will open in Google Maps. Oh, wait, that's my home. Forgot I didn't actually enter the correct lat and longs for this area. But now we have 3 steps: add missions, add collections, and relate data. We also need to upload some files, so I'll do that real quick. We're gonna go to the same button as before. We're gonna add, and we're gonna click File Upload. I'm gonna choose files. I have some dummy files and some files that have representative names. I'm going to upload all these. They're very small files, so it should be good. When uploading lots of files, sometimes little problems like this can appear where one file might not upload properly, but others will. That's okay. That's just our backend being itself. Just clicked on this button that says retry upload, and almost always gets the job done for the files that failed. Okay. So a little toaster notification is going crazy here, telling me all the files are uploading. If I want to get back to that overview from earlier, I can click on this View Overview button here, and here's all the definitions again. And yeah, so we'll start here with these 3 buttons. So we're going to add a mission. And we're going to call this Mexico Beach. And we have a description. Here, and we have a location and a lat and long. And we can assign authorship here. At a mission level, you have authorship because the mission gets the DOI. So I'm going to say myself and Maria were authors on this mission. And then these, whoever you select here will appear as selections in the collections as data collectors, okay? Because the collections are related within a mission. So this is everybody that went out and deserves authorship. And then you can say individually later in each collection who collected each set of data. And looks like we've got dates of mission still. So we add this mission, and it appears down here. You can see it down below, and if I needed to edit it, I can click that, and all the information will appear up here, and I can click this green button to then update it again. But for now, we'll keep going. So we've created a mission. Now we're going to add some collections. So we have research planning, engineering, social sciences, and documents. So we'll start with research planning. We'll call this interviewer preparation. Description. This is reference data, so this will link to, whatever link you put here will link to, will turn this text into a link to an external site and open in a new tab, which can be helpful. And who specifically collected this data, so let's say this was just me that collected it and not Maria, or wrote these documents that we're putting in the research planning collection. We're going to add collection, and here it is. I can edit it. And then we're going to add a social sciences collection. Now, in this project, we're going to make 2 social sciences collections because we want to divide them up based on the unit of analysis, which is children and adults. So this first one will be for the children. So we'll specify that here. We already specified in the title, but we need to enter it here as well. Modes of collection, we'll say just drawing prompts. You can add multiple modes of collection. You can add multiple sampling approaches. Let's say this was snowball. And the sample size is 12. And enter dates. You can also enter just one date if you'd like, if it's just a single date. Let's say Maria collected this. The location is at a shelter. And then that again, and the equipment. We have a lot of equipment here that is listed alongside the social science equipment down here. So down here we have some motive headsets and some pen and paper. Don't be intimidated by all the engineering stuff. I'm going to work with the developers to get them separated so that if you select a social sciences collection that you only see the social science equipment. But for now, you're going to have to see it alongside all the engineering equipment. And any information about restriction, say it's public use, reference data again, and a description we'll add here. I'm going to add this collection. So we got research planning collection and social sciences collection. That's good enough to start. So once you've added these collections, they appear as options by each of these dropdowns by each of these files, okay? So this is where I say these files go in this collection. So let's start with this child, the child social sciences collection. So that had this drawing, it had a recording, and yeah, we'll say that these 3 files go in the social sciences collection we just made. So you can select multiple at a time and say all of these belong to this one. And we click save. Wait a second. And voila. All of them are now in that collection. And we also had a research planning collection. Let me look at my notes to make sure I get the right ones in there. It's all alphabetical order, letters of support, IRB application, informed consent form, and sampling frame. So all those belonged to the research planning collection. So I'm gonna click save. And voila, you can see that they're there. So next step is to relate the data. So we have over here, we have the mission that we created earlier, and you're gonna say, I'm gonna say, in this mission, we had these research planning documents, and we had this data collection, okay? I can reorder them if I want the data to come first, if I want the research planning to come first, and if I had multiple missions here, I can reorder them so that certain missions come first, based on however you want to customize. And once I've done that, I can go over to publication preview and see how it's all looking. So this is a way to kind of get a peace of mind to see how your publication looks before it's actually published. And so here we have the mission, the authors, the DOI information that will appear here when published, the descriptions, and here I have the description here for this collection and this social sciences collection here with all the files we put in here. And if I wanted to see, if this got really long and complicated with multiple missions and lots of different collections, I can click this modal or click this button here to see a quick overview of the entire structure and relationships. And one last thing I want to do is I want to add some file tags to specific things. So over here, back in the curation directory, after you've selected a collection for a file, a set of file tags that are specific to that collection will appear. And so these are the agreed upon controlled vocabulary terms we've decided upon. And so this is an informed consent, so that's protocol. You click that, and I should save. You can put multiple tags. IRB is also protocol, and so on and so forth. And then up here for social sciences, make sure I make these ones right. So this is drawing, so it's going to be an image, and recording, so it's going to be audio. And I know it seems redundant, but using these common terms is going to help our search engine later on. And so let's go back to publication preview, and this should appear by each file. Just check in. Voila. So protocol, audio, image. Okay. So that's for social sciences, but let's say if I'm an interdisciplinary, I want to publish some engineering. So I go back to add collections and select engineering geosciences, and here's all the information for engineers. Let's say they're examining a water tower that fell down, observation types, wind damage, add another issue, or observation type structural and geotechnical. Dates of collection, let's just say this happened on one date. And let's say I collected it. Equipment, so much, whatever. Choose that and throw in a lorem ipsum description here. And here it appears here. And I first need to add it to my collection over here and relate data. So I'm going to say that this was also part of the mission. Water tower, save. It should be noted that research planning collections are for both engineers and social scientists. That's why it doesn't have specific metadata towards each. So if I was an engineer, I'd also probably make my own research planning collection that had my preparation materials in it. And I would maybe move that down here to be next to mine amidst all the other collections, okay? So that's a good overview for now. So let's say I'm happy with this. I've proofread everything because spell check doesn't really happen within our little text writers on this interface. So be sure to proofread things. Remember that this is a shared space, so Maria is able to access this area and she can look at my descriptions. She can look at how I've organized things and then let me know that she approves. So be sure and do that if you have a PI you'd like to review this data. And let's say I'm ready to go. So I want to publish this whole mission here. I'm going to click prepare to publish. And here's just a reminder of best practices. And click prepare to publish. And here we take you down a little bit of a pipeline. So kind of a shopping cart. User interface here where you select what you want to publish, you proofread things, you order your authors, you select your licenses, and then you turn both keys to launch the nukes and publish. So if I had multiple missions here, they would all appear here. So I'm going to say I want to publish this one. So I click select this mission and all of its files. I can see all the files within it are selected for publication. You can deselect a couple files here in case you see something you don't want to publish, but you still want to keep in a collection. And I click continue. Oh, I forgot to put files in the engineering geosciences collection. Let me go do that real quick. Sure, I'm taking much more than 10 minutes right now. So this will be a good reminder. So let's say these dummy files here all belong to the water tower. They're all pictures of the water tower falling over. Perfect. Go back to publication preview. Make sure that they appear. Good. Go back to here. And select this mission and click continue. We're going to review and proofread and spell check. We say you cannot make changes after publishing. If you do, for some reason, make one small thing that infuriates you, you can contact us and we'll try to get that change in, but do try to proofread as much as possible. And you can edit right here. There's links to the windows we were looking at earlier. Proofread your mission information. Proofread all your collection information. And then over here, order your authors. So let's say Maria did the most work, she comes first. And you get a preview of your citation. And after I click save here, it'll update with the order. So you see Maria's name now comes first, my name comes second. This is a citation that's like a book in that this mission is a chapter in the project Hurricane Structural Damage and Population Resilience, and a preview of where the DOI will show. And then at the end, you select licenses. We have lots of licenses here for other project types, such as software, but I'm guessing for social science work, you would choose between the first four. Maybe Maria can correct me on that. But once you've selected your license, I'm not going to click this button yet, but you click request DOI and publish. It's got a couple more confirmations just to really make sure that you're ready to go. And that's pretty much all of that. I guess I didn't show the documents collection real quick. I'll show you that. It's very bare bones, simple. We'll just add this real quick. It's very simple, and it will get a DOI separately. You can see that it already exists outside of a mission here in relate data. So you cannot put it in a mission, but you can have it outside of a mission, and you can put it above or below your mission in the order that people see, and it will go to its own DOI. Let me go over my notes because I wanted to show a couple things that pertain to people's questions. Over here in Edit Project, there is something called related work. So a couple of you were asking about publishing other people's data that's already been published before, and we were talking about linking back to that original data set. So here in related work would be a great place to do this, in that you would put the title here of the data you're republishing and a link to it, and this would appear and as a link here, and I would click on this and it would take me to take me to the data when published. If you want to tell us things via, or give us your input on this interface, because we're always looking to improve it, and don't worry about hurting our feelings. And I mean that, really, we're looking to improve it, so we'd like to hear all your feedback. You can go over to Help, and you can click on Submit a Ticket right over here. And when you're filling out that ticket, feel free to use my name, because then the people that triage the tickets will know to give it to me, and then I can see it and I can talk to developers about, or in Maria, about possibly making a change. And also, someone was asking about contacting people for further information. So we also added a new feature based on the feedback we got last summer, that allows people to quickly see the information on whoever published it. So, well, here's a ton of authors. But if I click on one of these people, let's say there's just a couple, well, that's not a good example. I guess these are all unregistered project members. They didn't enter email. Let's try this one. This is a good one. This person has lots of missions. And if I click on their name, here comes their name, their email, institution, and their ORCID ID, which makes it very easy for you to contact them if you have further questions about their data. And this will show up when you publish your work. So this person just had one collection in each mission. Okay, so that's overview of the interface. And now I thought we could do a little bit of an interactive part. And start thinking through how we want to organize your data. So this is an exercise that Maria has people do when they come to office hours, but we can get a head start on now. And that is kind of taking out a pen and paper, or you can use your computer's notepad and start thinking through your organization and what files you want to put in each collection, and how many collections you want to have, and just various organization. So for social sciences, a lot of people will create multiple collections based on different metadata. So in the example I just showed, they had a collection for each unit of analysis. Other people might divide up collections based, make multiple collections for each data collector, or a different date that it was collected, or different equipment, whatever you like, whatever would best help others understand your project. So yeah, so let's take about 10 minutes and start kind of sketching things out, writing things down. This doesn't have to be a quiet 10 minutes. If you would like to think out loud or ask questions, maybe other people have those questions, and maybe thinking out loud would answer other people's questions as well as you go through it. For those that are going to be publishing other, and that just reminded me, I forgot to show other, and I'll show that in a second. We're going to answer these 4 questions, but real quick, let me show other. I forgot. So let's add a new project real quick. Project members, it should not be autofilling this. It's basic. I'm going to go back to edit project. I'm going to select change project type. I'm going to select other projects. There's no overview for this. This is just best practices. It's very simple. Now we are presented with more information here. It's the same things like related word, keywords, and description. But the important one here is data type. And we've added in social sciences as one of the data types. And so this is important because other projects all kind of appear as one, but this is the piece of metadata that will let users differentiate between all the different other projects when they're all listed and published. Keywords. Looks good. So there is no 1, 2, 3 steps over here because it's a very basic area to publish. So we're going to add some very basic files. And sometimes if things aren't appearing, like metadata you've entered or files that are uploaded aren't appearing immediately, just click refresh, and that usually helps. There are little quirks to the interface again that that we're working on, but you just have to deal with for now. So here are the files, and we have the only part to other projects is file tags. So we have a list of files here. These currently do not include social science file tags, but I've talked with Keith and Maria, and we're getting social science file tags from the field research interface over to this interface within the next month for you to use. In the meantime, you can select other and enter in a custom tag here. And then publication preview, looks, well, this is left over from the other project types, but you can just continue to prepare to publish. And then you select what files you want to publish. I'm just going to publish 3 of them and then go through a very similar selection as before, proofreading things, choosing licenses and such. So yeah, that's other project. And getting back to the activity, for those doing other, try to think of a good project description. So project description is what appears at the top of your project here. And you can see a good example. Over here, we'll load that in a second, but try to think about these 4 questions when you write your project description, because this is what one of the first pieces of information that people see when they're looking at your project. And it can help set apart your project from other projects by talking about what is unique about your project, how can it be reused, what it's about, and who is the audience. Try to keep it concise and not too lengthy. Some people tend to just copy paste their abstracts in here. Yeah, so for others, think about these questions. For those that are planning on publishing via field research, think about how you will organize into each of these collections. I have the metadata listed here and the file types listed below. And that's all. So we'll take about 10 minutes for that.
Yeah, I think what I want to say is just think about the structure of your data. You don't have to be right or wrong. There's nothing right or wrong. Just think about how would you structure your data. I have been talking with Jason privately, and he was thinking, okay, how can I organize my data? Maybe by areas in the United States, by states in the United States. And so just think about if you require different missions, or if you want to just say it's one mission and many collections, and each collection is an area of the United States. There's nothing right or wrong. And then at the end of 8 minutes, you will just show your diagram, and you can ask questions via the chat to me, to Mayar, to Craig, or to everyone. It's just a little bit thinking about your own data set.
Mm-hmm.
And Craig, I thank you for that, Maria. And Craig, just thank you for driving us through the data model. And I think it's just so powerful to see it. And so thank you, that was outstanding. And then Craig, I actually have a question for you about this activity. So all of the data ambassadors who are on the call, we actually, as you know, because I know your team read all of our data templates, but we already did those data templates. And so based on like what you saw in the data templates, for example, everybody already did a project title and they have a project description. So based on, we kind of already have like the basic foundation. Is there a place where you might recommend during this activity that we really focus based on what we've already accomplished with those data templates?
Sure, I forgot about the data templates. However, those will be a great stepping off point to organize into the collections now that people know the different collections. As for project descriptions, I would say make sure descriptions you've already written answer these 4 questions because I know a lot of them that we see on Design Safe do not. Yeah.
One of the things that I want to say about that, and I think that they should focus on the structure of the data, but in relation to the data templates, they have in the data templates, people have described their project. Sometimes the project description is too based on their papers and on the publications for journals. What you have to think, or what I would say, is to think about this is the publication of the data set. So focus more on, of course, you gather this data for a specific purpose to show something and to demonstrate something, but think less about the paper. You will link the paper and think more about the data.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
I was even to flip that point. So like I reached out to Betty and asked Betty for a project title to go in her data template. And she actually sent me 2 titles, one that was sort of her big project on schools and disasters, but then she sent me one that was much more data centric. And as Betty can affirm, I ended up using the shorter, more data centric title. So I just, for all of our social and behavioral scientists on the call, and Hiba and Dan, our honorary social scientists, I think this is a really, really important point that you're hearing, that it just invites you to write in a different kind of way. And that was something that Maria and Craig really held our hands through as we were working through that first data publication. So thank you.
I am just here answering to some of the questions that people send me privately, but I guess if you send it to everyone, people can see the questions. I have had interesting discussions with Jason because he was telling me that, you know, in the natural hazards, in the field research, we have event and event type, and everything is too tied to the natural hazard event. But here you are doing studies in the field, but they're not related necessarily to an event, but disaster risk management, or, you know, medical condition, or things like that. So he was giving me some suggestions on how to make this even more flexible so that we can, you know, maybe get the event not to be a required field for social scientists. And so you may not put that, and to change certain terminology so that this will be appropriate for not so much, you know, oriented, but study oriented. So that was a good point. Another point that we were talking with Betty, you know, she's asking, well, it's better to split the data, to make different collections, it's better to put a master file. There's an issue of, it will take me more time to pre-process the data. So all of these considerations are very important. Sometimes you need to publish, you do what you can, you explain what's happening. Other times you may not be sure what is more useful to the user. So think about that. I always tell people to think about, how do you think, or ask potential users, how would people reuse more of this data? If it's split, if it's all together, if it, you know, thinking about the tools that they may use for analyzing or reanalyzing the data. And sometimes it is really important to ask potential users, ask your colleagues, how would you like this data to be presented to you? Would it be more useful if we break it apart? Would it be more useful if we, you know, etc. Like here, time 1 and time 2, we did this time. That's why we did the missions or waves, because people really wanted to differentiate the different teams that work on these different missions at different time sets, or they wanted to really distinguish, oh, this was done this year, this was done this other year. and there are certain differences or not. So think about that. How do you think that your users will better understand the data, better use it, reuse it? I have another interesting question. When you are publishing data that is secondary data, even if you have reused it, what do you do about the licenses? Design Safe offers a lot of different licenses, but the first thing is to look into what was the original license of the data. That will tell you how to license the subsequent data set, the one that you're going to publish now. There are licenses that have restrictions. There are data sets that have restrictions, and they tell you you cannot do nothing with this data. You cannot convert it. You cannot, you cannot do anything. Others say you can use it wherever you want, but you have to credit me. And others is like, you can do whatever you want and you don't even need to credit me. So it depends on the original data license, how the license that you will choose in Design Safe. And we will do office hours to pick up the right license.
Greg, I know you showed us when you were doing the demo that where we can click and submit a ticket. And you very generously told us all as your early adopters that we can like tag you so the ticket will get triaged to you, Craig. But I actually had a question about what if people like at the outset, they get into Design Safe, we all are logged in there, and right at the beginning, if one of us have a question about whether we should be in the other or the field research, would that be something, Craig, where we would submit a ticket and tag you, or leading into the conversation Maria's getting ready to take us through, is that something where we would reach out to Maria and ask Maria? So can you just help us to know sort of when do we use that ticket function, Craig, versus when do we reach out to Maria directly or go to her office hours and so forth?
That question is much better for office hours.
Okay.
Probably some discussion about something. If there's an interface thing or having a problem, submit it via a ticket. But if your general advice about the organization of your project or what project type you should use, definitely use the office hours. And
so that's like when our names weren't appearing, like when for whatever reason the author names disappeared from our publication, that would be a ticket because we want it to go to you as a developer. If we have sort of a conceptual question, we go see Maria at office hours.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And so if I go over to here to user or research workbench, go down to user guides. I think actually, Maria, where do I get to your office hours links?
My office hours is additional guides. Go down, down, down. a little bit. Where's the data management guide? I never can find submit a ticket.
Sorry, this is embarrassing. I know that once you get to a
someplace that
once you make a project, there's a link within the project because I put that one.
Okay.
So let me show that real quick.
Under Learning Center, under Education and Training.
Oh, nice. Thank you, Mayar.
Okay, yeah, education and training. You go down here, virtual office hours, the section.
Nice. Thank you. And Craig, we're getting close to the end of this session. And
Yeah.
so do you
Sorry for
want to
taking so long.
help us to kind of wrap it up? If we drew our pictures and everything, what would you like us to do for next steps and as a wrap up for this wonderful segment of the training?
Yeah, well, I think some people could probably share their organization. Would anyone like to share their thoughts on how they'd like to organize their data or their...
Or if they have doubts.
Yeah.
Will you stop sharing your screen, Craig? Maybe, and we'll see if anybody wants to raise their hand.
So anybody has any doubts or what type of model to use? Questions about that?
I can say I wish I would have done the data template slightly different now that we have this, Craig, because it just really clarified. I did draw mine out and I will say it really clarified for me, like in the research planning for publishing the SCR data, I'm gonna have a bunch of links to Converge and SCR in the documents collection. The main thing is gonna be the SCR survey. And then in the social sciences collection is gonna be just the de-identified.csv file, the README file, but then it made me go through and answer all of the methodological questions like individual is a unit of analysis, population-based sample size was 645 in year 1, 946 researchers in year 2, et cetera. So it helped me get ready to get everything to go up and online. So I really liked that approach that you had us go through. Thank you.
Yeah, anybody else?
I had a specific question related to the check sheets that we were hoping to publish. So it's a larger project in which there are a number of documents associated with that overall project. And I guess my first question is, would that fall under the other category? It's not really field research.
No, I think that your project, I would say each sheet, depending on the authors, I would think about the authors. So who are the authors of each project, of each, sheet. And if you have an overall, so you will publish each sheet as an other project. So sheet 1, XYZ, sheet 2, XYZ, with related documentation. You will get a DOI for that. You will credit the authors for that. And then in related works, you will link that to the next sheet and to the other sheet and to the other sheet. So you will be able to relate everything to go from one sheet to the next. But if there's if you for any reason need an overall project that says where you want to put some extra documentation that pertains to every sheet, you may want to publish those extra documentation as many times as you publish the sheet, or create an umbrella project, another umbrella project. Beware that you will get another DOI for that umbrella project and link all the sheets to that umbrella project, each individually with a DOI. So there are different ways of thinking about it.
Thank you.
Any other one has a out about how they will use the field research collection? Okay.
Okay. Well, we can move on.
Here for you, or there's a the way in which we will proceed is that there I can say this now. and take time. So we have allotted during office hours, so I conduct office hours, but we decided to allot many months of office hours that you can sign up to for half-hour slots, or if you think you need more time, you sign for 2 slots. And I will give you a sign sheet, a Meet Me sign sheet, so that you can reserve time so that you will get to publish these data, and we will get supported, and we will read all the descriptions, and we will go through the whole process on a one-to-one basis, and it will be me or Craig or Mayar that we will support these office hours that will be devoted to this Publish Your Data event.
Maria, do you want me to drop the sign up into the chat, your link? Okay.
Yes. The big, okay. Yes, Rachel, you can get I'm looking at Rachel's sheet. And you want 1 DOI per sheet, no? To credit the author of each one. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Maria, can you tell us if so everybody, to the data ambassadors, I just put the sign up link with Maria, and I cannot tell you all enough, like how, with the first, that data publication I did, I mean, Maria, like, it was so intimidating and overwhelming. And then Maria just sort of like holds your hand every step of the way. And then it's just become so clear so quickly. And so I really want to encourage you to sign up for this opportunity to have a time with Maria. But then Maria, will you tell us, based on what you've seen from all of our data templates, how much time do you think that we need? Is it a 30-minute meeting to get started and then we go off and do our thing? Like, how are you kind of envisioning this will work?
So from the data templates, I see that most of you have, all of your materials ready. You know what you want to publish. You have your document. Everybody's thinking about putting their IRB. Some are just going to do documentation. So I think that, for small projects that just, let's say that you are just doing the survey instrument, for example, and your IRB and documents, just check 1 hour and you may not be having to come, because it's also, I encourage you, all of you, to, first of all, before even coming to the office hours, you should open your project, go through the motions of selecting the type, and if it is a mistake, don't worry, you're not publishing anything, you're not breaking anything. You just add the information as you see, so you come and you upload the data. So for people that has a lot of data and they have to structure it, like, let's say, maybe Betty, I don't know how big the data is, and Jason's data, maybe it's not a lot of data, but it is a lot of different, collections. Or for people that are thinking, should I also publish or link to the original raw data set? That might take more time. So maybe we can do half hour first and then 1 hour second. It's okay. I don't think, I mean, the office hours don't get like, so busy. So you can reserve and then you can unreserve if we solve everything in 1 day. And then I'd rather have you try by yourselves. Our experience, to tell you the truth, is that, so we spent, when field research for engineers was first released, we got a lot of office hours, people during office hours. Now everybody's like this. They don't need us anymore. It's the first time, especially if you're not publishing a lot of data frequently, then you maybe feel a little bit intimidated, as Lori says, and you have to relearn things every time. But after it really is intuitive. I have to credit Craig for that. We don't have people coming anymore for experiments. It's just they do it. And the same with field research for engineers. Maybe they send an email and they say, can you look at my data before I publish it? Or, can you tell me if this is right? And we resolve over email. So that's the good thing. So it should not be a huge process, and you're not breaking anything at all at this point.
Well, thank you for giving us this kind of personalized attention, Maria, so that we can learn. And I guess before we sort of transition off of getting the personalized help, then now to the data ambassadors, we have sort of a 15-minute block set aside. And Valerie Marlowe, this is kind of what you asked about at the beginning about discoverability and really how can we get all of this great material, legacy data, archival data sets out there. So Maria, do you want to take sort of the next 12 to 15 minutes to talk about the open data DOIs and data discoverability?
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody have any looming things before we transition to that next 15 minutes or so?
I know it seems intimidating, all of these explanations, but I'm telling you that once you go through them, at least you are very well guided through the process. So I'm going to just present about its, hold on, okay. It's the impact of published data. So, why do we need to publish research data? And Lori spoke about this, and the push to publish data operates under the umbrella of the open data movement, whose premise is that data should be free as much as possible of limitations to access and reuse. Open data promotes transparency, accountability, broader participation, leads to more discoveries, and in the academic context, data publication in repositories implies that we're going to preserve the scientific record as evidence of the research activity. And I see that there's an archivist here, so she will understand me. I am an archivist too. So we are going to provide the evidence of the scientific record. But, it really takes a lot of work to ascribe to this open data movement. And the reality is that a lot of this work is on the researcher. The researcher has to do it. We as curators can help you, but the researcher has to do a lot. So you really have to understand that it is also, you get credit for your work, you can promote your work, you are going to be promoted as well through this publication. There's something for you as well. People should start considering that data citations are as important as paper citations and link them together. So the DOIs play a big role on this equation. The DOI are a big part of this process. DOIs are systems that provide a technical and social infrastructure for the registration and use of persistent interoperable identifiers. And these are unique alphanumeric strings that permanently resolve to the landing page URL where the data is described and made available. And it's permanent because even if the data moves from one organization to the other, that unique alphanumeric string that people, click on from a reference, from a citation, it will always resolve to the data, no matter if the data has moved. Because of this, it's not just a technical infrastructure, but it's a social commitment. We are committed in Design Saves to custody your data. And if we disappear for some reason, somebody else will take over and will do that for you. So it is a social and a technical responsibility. But DOIs also are attached to the metadata, all this metadata that Craig was showing you how to put in. It's attached to that, and this metadata is exposed through web protocols, and academic aggregators, and hopefully Google Google Search, Google Data, Google Scholar indexes that metadata. So here you see an example of, I think it's Lori's project. No, Nathaniel's project, food access, how we can search for that in Google search and it will come up. And also you can see Elena Sutclay's data set published in DesignSafe. You can find it in Google Dataset search. So this metadata that you put is used to promote your work under the hood. Okay, you don't see that work, but it's happening through the DOI. Good metadata improves the search. But the metadata is not enough. And you really need to do something. You have to do something. You need to market your work. You need to include the data citation in your papers in the reference section. And you need to present your data at conferences, because we have heard from researchers, and what they say is that they will reuse data that they have heard about in conferences, in professional meetings. That data will be most sought after. So you really need to talk about your data in these conferences. You can use your website, your faculty page, your research page to include citations and news about your data, including the DOI, because cross-referencing bumps your data ratings on the web searches and your data goes up in the Google search. And you need to be ambassadors for your data and for all data. Include the citations of data that you reuse in DesignSafe. And here we have a lot of people reusing data in your project. So you really need to cite that. And we have two opportunities: related work and related data. These two places where you can really reference precisely the data that you have used to create your synthetic, what we call synthetic data. Reusing data in your projects, which you do a lot, some of your research is basically just related to reusing data. You have to be aware of existing licenses and permissions, and we talked about it, but we will talk during office hours. And you should publish the synthetic data, the data derived from other people's data. Reference the reused data in your publications in DesignSafe. So that's a good practice, and it emphasizes this good, this linkage. We are counting. In DesignSafe, we are counting. We are counting citations counts per Google Scholar alerts. And as we improve our platform, we will be able to get the citations automatically in the next future, in the next 5 years, through other initiatives. All of this is an evolving field, and data is only now being, the service of getting citation counts like you get in your Google Scholar profile is only emerging, slowly emerging, and we want to take advantage of that. And we are also counting, and we will be publishing soon across this year and next year, downloads, previews, copies to measure the impact of your, so you can see the impact of your data. So you can see if people have used the data within and outside the platform. That being said, the more metadata, the better metadata that you put, we will put it to work for you, but you also have to do your part. Sign up for Publish Your Data event dedicated office hours, or come to office hours when needed. When this event, goes away in the next year or so, you're always welcome. Use the help tickets, because sometimes the help ticket, even if you put something conceptual, we have a very good triage system, and also it allows us to track consultations. And you can also email me. I think you should, if you have further questions, we can continue the conversation. If any of the questions that you asked at the beginning have not been have not been answered.
Maria, I have a question about the We Are Counting, and I don't know if this is a Tim question or a Maria question, but at one point we put up on our Converge website that you've published so far 9 terabytes of data. and literally thousands of data sets now. So can you give the data ambassadors what's sort of the most recent update in terms of how much data is up there and how many data sets have been published?
I believe there's 270 publications so far in that ballpark. Is that right, Maria? And I'll have to dig up the total number of terabytes. It's in our most recent quarterly report, but I can get that real quick.
So you have to think that this community has been publishing engineering data since it's almost 15 or 20 years ago already, Tim. I think it's 15 at least. 15, 10 before us and 5 now already. So we are carrying data from the beginning of NERI, which was not called NERI, but it doesn't matter. It was called NIS, and then before that, maybe it had another name. That was only, I would say, experimental data, first for earthquakes only. Then we started doing for wind research, for flood, for so wind and storm and earthquakes. And then it was for simulation type of research, not only experiments, simulation, now field research, now social science. And so, you know, some of the data sets from 10 years ago are still being reused by others. So it's a long tradition or history of data sets. And so it's almost approximately, I think it's 2,000 data sets as a number of data sets.
Yeah.
Yes, but 9 terabytes of data.
Yeah, the data has gone up significantly for published data. We're now published data, and this is since Design Safe only, not the older data. So this would be just since we took the program over 5 years ago. 33 terabytes of data that we have published in really in 3 years, I would say, Maria, isn't it, since we've been publishing roughly 3.5?
Already the 5 years. Remember, we were publishing things from NIS really.
Well, but I mean just with our data models.
Our data models, no, you're right. 3.5, I would say.
Okay, 3.5. It's 33 terabytes of data. Yeah. Around 270 publications, somewhere north of that. It's total data is pushing 300 terabytes. So about 1/10 of the data actually has been published, right? So again, as we've talked about earlier, you don't have to publish all of the data you bring to Design Safe. You select which bits of it you want. Some of this data is being prepared still to be published, but other of it is data that they bring so that they can use our interactive tools in the workspace to work on that data and then boil it down to what they actually want to publish. And that's fine. You can bring as much data as you want. There's really no restrictions on how much data comes to us. But yeah, about a 10th of the total data that we've, since we took over, has actually been published.
Wow. Well, and I think, so Tim and Maria, thank you for that. And to the social and behavioral scientists on the call, I think picking up on what Maria just said about the earthquake engineers in particular, and then more broadly in the engineering community, having that culture of data publication and data sharing. And I think that sort of leads us into talking about this, what does it mean to be a converged data ambassador, and what is it that we're trying to achieve through bringing the social and behavioral sciences into the design safe community, into the broader natural hazards community that's already been established among the engineers with the data publication. And so I know Mehar was maybe going to show us the HazMapper features and a couple of other things. So do you want to show that really quickly, and then we'll transition over to the talking about the data ambassador things to end out?
Sure, yeah. I can just share my screen here. So I wanted to just quickly go through a couple of things that I wanted to mention. We discussed a lot of different things in terms of the publication and bringing your data inside the design safe, and then going through the publication process to actually get your DOI and publish your data set. But the very first thing is that I just wanted to point out that the file browser data transfer, while it's very convenient, it's not designed for like large number of files or large volumes of data. So if you have one particular data sets that are in terms of like size, they are in the order of like gigabytes, or you have like various number of folders or file numbers that you want to transfer, then there are these different methods of data transfer that we would like and recommend you to use. And the most recommended one is the Globus, which we have here as under our user guide, under the data transfer guide. You will be able to kind of like go through the process that you will essentially be setting up your Globus. And after kind of like going through these steps, you would be able to kind of like use the interface for Globus to bring your, all of the data sets that are in your laptop or any other location that is residing in there into your design safe data repository, whether it's in your My Data or My Project or so on. So I just wanted to point out that, and then I wanted to also have a discussion on the types of things that we have under the Workspace. So the idea and the vision here was, besides the publishing of your data sets, was to actually support the end-to-end cycle of your research. That a lot of the simulation and other types of tools that we have in Workspace might be for engineering, kind of like engineering knowledge. But then again, we have also some visualization and then data processing tools that might be suitable according to what I heard from the researchers. Just today, actually, I learned a lot that you may be able to kind of like use Jupyter notebooks that will essentially support whether it's Python or R or some other kind of like languages that you may be interested in. And all of the data sets that you bring into Design Safe will be essentially mounted here, and you would be able to interactively work with them, whether it's statistical analysis or data analytics. If you're doing machine learning types of analysis on your data, so you should be able to kind of like open up a notebook and start kind of like going through this. So this particular example is kind of like going through one of the data sets that are already published from Hurricane Harvey, and kind of like starts doing some sort of a machine learning algorithm to analyze the roof damage after the hurricane. So yeah, that right there we have kind of like one of the things I wanted to mention is this data processing applications that we support. And I also noticed that a lot of geospatial data sets are actually discussed, whether it's a flood risk kind of like an analysis in terms of the social science, or so on, we offer two visualization applications. One is a HazMapper, which I'm just briefly gonna go over here. So essentially, HazMapper is a web application that allows to visualize various data sets that are geospatial in their nature. So whether it's a series of geotagged photos. So in this case, this is a series of geotagged photos that are taken after an earthquake in Ridgecrest earthquake in California. So you can see that the HazMapper would be able to kind of like visualize the data set, the pictures, and the user would be able to kind of like quickly go through a various number of pictures here. It also accepts the GPS tracks in terms of if that's some sort of a data set that you would be kind of like dealing with. So it kind of like supports a variety of the data sources and data types. It also visualize like point clouds. So in case so in terms of the analysis, if you have some sort of a if you have like a point cloud data set, which I'm not quite sure if this is kind of like something that is used in the social sciences, but you would be able to bring that the type of data sets in and visualize them as well. In the HazMapper. And kind of like last but not least is the QGIS desktop that we run on a VNC here in DesignSafe, which essentially allows you to work with raster, vector, and geospatial and temporal data sets that you may be having with your project. So I can kind of like go into details of it if you wanted to actually use one of these tools in DesignSafe, and maybe we can kind of like discuss in more details later in one of the maybe
office hours. No, people should, yes, people should let me know, oh, I want specifically these. People should let know, I want specifically, you know, QGIS or HazMapper, Jupyter, and then the office hours are with Mayar, and we coordinate that.
Beautiful. And Mayar, just thank you. I know that was the 5-minute overview of just the incredible power of DesignSafe. And so just thank you for taking the time to show us that, and so we can meet you too. So if the data ambassadors on the call do end up having questions, they now know they can reach out to you. And so just thank you for showing us that. And at the August 27th session that we're going to have, we actually do have a couple of social scientists who are joining that session who do have quite a bit of geospatial data that they're very interested in learning from you. So I think this was very good you showed us, and definitely will be of interest at the next one too. So thank you for sliding that in. And to everybody on the call, thank you for hanging in here. I know that everybody is just sort of like in Zoom overload. And so we only have about 19 minutes left for this training session. But during these last 19 minutes, what I want to do is I want to talk to you all about what is next with you're actually going to be the first ever Converge data ambassadors. And I was, for another project, I was re-looking at Everett Rogers's Diffusion of Innovations. And you all are the early adopters. You are, when there are major transformations in a culture, you all are the ones who are helping to make this transformation possible in our community. So I want to say thank you. And then I'm going to share my screen just very, very briefly one last time. And then I'm going to come off of the share screen so we can end in conversation in our last few minutes. So let me get back into slideshow mode, and just everybody, thank you for hanging in there. I know so many of you have little ones at home and just so much going on. So thank you for your focus and attention. Let me take that. Oops, sorry. Are you, Maria, are you seeing the slideshow?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so everybody, we're gonna, just our last little module here in the training session is dedicated again to talking about what it means to be a Converge data ambassador. And I just wanna pause and again, thank the Design Safe team, because the first time I talked to them about this, they said, yes, you know, they were so excited. We were excited. They just, this would not, none of this is possible, obviously, without the brilliance of Design Safe and all that they bring to this. So I want to thank them. And I want to thank all of our colleagues who are on the call who months ago, way back in February, you filled out the application to come to Boulder to this training session. And I reread all of your applications in anticipation of this training session. And I was moved then, I move now about the depth and thoughtfulness of what you all have. So now the question is, what can we do together now that we are developing these new knowledge and skills together? And so what is the big point of being a Converge data ambassador? This is about helping to advance social science, but also our interdisciplinary collaborations with our engineering colleagues and colleagues in other disciplines by helping others to do, at minimum, I think these 5 things that you're now learning how to do. 1, to go out there, how do you put your data up in Design Safe so that you can find your data? That's what that 1-minute video was that we watched at the beginning. How can we use Design Safe to both share our new data from our new projects, but also to go back into our filing cabinets and to share our legacy data? I'm really excited to work with the Design Safe team to publish some of my data from Hurricane Katrina from 15 years ago so that other new generations might be able to access and use that data. Number 3, by being data ambassadors, we're going to be able to help others to figure out how we can coordinate with other researchers and coordinate our data, how we can work together to, again, encourage replication, which is good for science, but to discourage duplication of efforts, and also ultimately to get credit for the amazing work that you all are doing and that our colleagues are doing through getting DOIs assigned. And so I sent out, in advance of this training session, I sent out a check sheet for all of you who are interested in continuing forward with this and really becoming a data ambassador and becoming an inaugural data ambassador. And the good news is I'm happy to report that you now have basically completed almost everything on this check sheet except for the last 2 things, which are to become a data ambassador, you do need to publish something on Design Safe. And that's not because Maria and Tim and I and Craig, we're not trying to just twist your arm to get you to go out and publish something. We really recognize that you need to, if you're going to be a data ambassador, you need to go through this process so that you can learn how to do this. And what I described earlier as intimidation very soon became like a sense of just total excitement, because I realized that we can do this too and we can move through this. And so the next thing you need to do is to actually work with the Design Safe team to publish something, whether it's a check sheet, a survey instrument, or if it's your actual novel data set. And then the one last thing that you will see on that data set or on that data checklist to become a data ambassador is the request that then you go out and you share the knowledge that you have attained with someone else or some other group. So whether it's that you teach about it in a class, that you share it through a workshop, whatever you do, that's sort of the last step in the process to be a Converge data ambassador. And once you have done those things, then I ask that you return that check sheet to me. And then as the inaugural Converge data ambassadors, then you will receive a $750 stipend, which was going to be your travel money to bring you to Boulder, Colorado. But since that's looking like it's going to be a ways away, you're going to receive a stipend for having gone through this training and then becoming a data ambassador. And then we hope you'll use that stipend maybe in the future to come back and see us when you can. So here's where I want to take you right now. What I did was I put up in this spreadsheet that you can see right there. So I'm going to go into the spreadsheet, and I actually went back to your original applications. And so Maria, are you seeing the Excel file, or are you still seeing my PowerPoint?
I see your PowerPoint.
Okay, so I'm going to stop share and I'm going to reshare. And so everybody, Maria, now can you see the Excel spreadsheet? Okay, thank you. So to all of the data ambassadors who are on the call, what I did was I went back through your applications that I don't even expect you to remember them, because this was way back, many months ago in February when you sent them to me. But in your applications, one of the questions that I asked all of you at the end was, if you are to become a data ambassador, where or who would you share this material with, and how would you share this material? And so Rich, for example, he is joining us from the Bahamas, and he said he would really like to bring this to his colleagues at the University of the Bahamas. How is he going to do that? Through his courses that he teaches. Nicole, who is on our organizing committee, she said she's going to share that through working groups that she helps to lead, through the University of Washington Collaborative on Extreme Event Resilience, through the EER Public Health Working Group that she leads. Betty Lai said she's going to share it with the International Society of Traumatic Stress Studies. Valerie Marlowe, who you've already heard from, said she's definitely going to share it with her colleagues at the Disaster Research Center and figure out how to bring the archives that they already have available into Design Safe. Alexis, who, by the way, Alexis lost power. She's in Connecticut. She's in the middle of a hurricane. And so she texted me and said she's off the call because she's lost power. But Alexis said she's going to share it with the NCAR Innovators Program, which are early career faculty that she's with, and with the Pi R Squared group at NYU that Alexis is a researcher with. I said I'm going to share it through Converge, SSEER, the Natural Hazard Center, and then the mechanisms that I really want to use. I want to help early career faculty who want to write NSF workshop grants to do training sessions like we're doing now, to go and do those in their regions of the country. So Nicole Arrett might want to do one of these in Seattle. Valerie Marlowe might want to do one of these at the University of Delaware. And so I'd really like to see people writing NSF workshop grants to run training sessions like what we're doing here, and I'd love to support you in that. Daniel, he said that he really wants to do this, share this with his colleagues and his students at Vanderbilt. Jason, for those of you who don't know, Jason has this amazing podcast, Disasters Deconstructed, and he wrote in his application that he was going to use the podcast and actually share about these new capabilities. And then he is also with the Florida Institute for the Built Environment at the University of Florida, and that was the network he wanted to share through. Hauray is an integral member of this amazing group in Canada that has been drawing together social science quick response researchers in Canada. So that's where Hauray said he wanted to share. Melissa Villarreal said she's going to take this to the Rising Voices Network, which brings Indigenous knowledge together with earth science researchers. And so Melissa was going to bring this to Rising Voices and also to the Bill Anderson Fund, which supports students as well as alumni from historically underrepresented groups. And so that's where Melissa's going. And then Jolie said she's going to share this through the Natural Hazard Center networks. And so that's just, you can already see from just before you all even knew what Design Safe was capable of, this is what you wrote about in your applications. And what you said you want, how you said you wanted to do this. So I'm going to stop sharing now. We have 8 minutes left. And what the Design Safe team and the Converge team, what we would like to hear now from our future data ambassadors, from Jason, from Betty, from Rachel, Valerie, Hiba, Daniel, Nicole, Melissa, Luther. What are the other places where you think you might want to share, or what questions or concerns or hopes do you have in terms of becoming data ambassadors and going forth? And so with that, thank you for listening to that overview. Thank you for being early adopters and innovators. And now the Design Safe team and the Converge team would just like to hear from all of you in our remaining minutes. Thank you.
I would be interested in bringing this to even conferences. There's been a lot of interest in the Society for Risk Analysis, for example. Last year's theme was focused on doing risk analysis in the era of big data. And risk analysis always technically suffers from lack of data, but now we sort of have both problems. We either have too much data or too little data, and I think just the whole practice of following through a protocol to share the data and informing risk analysts on how they can access that information or contribute to that information, I feel like it would be helpful. And the mechanism is sort of there in terms of the process. So after risk analysis, there's usually a couple of days where people would give workshops. And so sort of like the infrastructure is there, and maybe we can work something out through like funding through a workshop, through NSF, but it's not like we need to gather people in a place. They're already there for 3 days, and then the last day of the conference is usually dedicated for conferences, for workshops. So I would be interested in exploring that idea.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, in addition to, of course, Lori mentioned at the DRC, and then we'd love to host a workshop for people in the region. I think that would be really great. There's a couple of other ways that I really would love to plug this in. I'm really excited about the DOIs and our ability to sort of link those with historic materials in our archives and other research studies that may not be in the same format as would be uploaded to, we'll certainly upload some data, but some other things that wouldn't necessarily be uploaded to Design Safe. Get a lot of research inquiries, and I would love to be able to pass that along. And also vice versa, if there's material that goes along with the project, supplemental material, physical materials, things like that aren't a good fit for upload, we can certainly talk about homes for them, some maybe even in our own archives. And I've been talking with Maria about just kind of online right now. I've had some conversations with the librarians at NIST and some other places about developing some standardized metadata schemes for disaster-related data. And I think that this is a great sort of pathway to do that. And I think there's a lot of potential there to really make things easier, I think, for our field in terms of organizing data and accessing it going forward. So I'm really excited. Thank you guys so much for coordinating all of this.
I'm super excited to, this is Nicole. Thank you guys so much for organizing, and I learned so much every time I hear you guys talk. But we at the University of Washington are going to be the site of the next National Institutes of Health Disaster Research Response Workshop, which will be based on a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. And some of the objectives include, how other disaster researchers might come into Seattle to conduct research, and how we can kind of support and facilitate that here at UW. And so we're going to have a lot of folks attending. So I would love, Lori, to talk to you about maybe coupling that with one of these, applying for an NSF workshop grant so that we could offer that at the same time. Because I think we're going to have a big audience for that we could really share this with. Thank you again. This was really wonderful.
Hey, Jason here. Yeah, thanks so much for this event. It's been amazing. And what comes to mind, Lori, about the workshops is we've done a lot of work at UF with having a new research institute, building the network in Gainesville especially, of researchers from across different faculties. And so I'd love to maybe talk to you about using that work that we've already done to bring that network together for a workshop. I think it might work really well. And obviously I'm really excited to go back to my institute and share about this because I think everybody will be interested in getting on board.
Betty Lai. Just to add, as everyone's been talking, and thank you all for this wonderful training today, I've just been so excited about the possibilities for training graduate students and undergraduate students, because when you think about all the benefits and how to sort of create the culture that data should be open, we should be sharing, and how important that is to start thinking about early in your career, but also thinking about getting credit, because all of us know, having come up through the system, that you spend a lot of time toiling before you get any credit. So trying to really acknowledge people's work earlier. And I've just been excited to think about ways that we can incorporate this into early training too.
Nice. So everybody, we have 1 minute remaining, and as everybody knows, we start and end on time. And so I'm gonna honor that, but I just, in that last minute, I wanna again just thank the entire Design Safe team for everything you have done to make this possible and to bring this forward for us. Thank you to the Converge and the Natural Hazard Center team for being the web that makes everything possible. And thank you to the first ever, you're gonna be glad you signed up for the August 4th session, the first ever Converge Data Ambassadors. And just, I'm gonna share the link to that. I'm gonna update the Google sheet that I just showed you at the end with your outstanding ideas. So we're gonna continue to build that out together. I'll send that out to you. You be back in touch with me when you're ready to submit your Converge Data Ambassador form, and we wanna put you up on the website, show you off, and show the world just what you know and how great you are. And just thank you so much to everybody. And I know that Maria and Craig and Mehar, you're gonna have us knocking on your door. And so the social and behavioral scientists are coming for you. And thank you for opening this door for us.
Thank you. And there are plenty of opportunities for you to sign. So please do, really.
Thank you. And I recorded this entire session. And so if anybody wants to, as you're sharing this and so forth, know that we'll have this session recording available as well. And thank you, everybody. I hope you have a beautiful rest of the day. Be safe and wear your masks and take care of everybody around you. And we'll see you soon. Bye.